In the last 3 days, in different parts of India and different parts of the world, 3 airline pilots in separate flights have died either while they were flying their aircraft or right before they were to begin flying an aircraft. 2 of those incidents happened here in Indian airspace. The deaths are, of course, unconnected. But social media and other media have been abuzz with very unsettling headlines like the one I just read out to you. 3 airline pilots in 3 days. What's going on? Is there something that we are missing? Is there something to worry about? Now, first, let me tell you about these 3 separate incidents. The first incident was a Qatar Airways pilot flying from Delhi to Doha, serving as an additional crew member. He collapsed in the passenger cabin and passed away. The second incident was on an Indigo flight from Nagpur to Mumbai. The pilot collapsed at the boarding gate just before the flight, and he was taken to a hospital. Tragically, he was brought dead. The third incident took place mid-air between Miami in the United States and Chile's capital Santiago in South America, when the pilot collapsed and lost consciousness only to pass away later. The aircraft, in fact, had to make an emergency landing in Panama. Well, the plane was safe, it was landed successfully, but the pilot was declared dead. 3 pilots in 3 days can sound very alarming at a time when passenger aviation is booming again in the wake of the COVID pandemic. Stories like these can add to anxieties of passengers. So it's very important to shine some light on these incidents, put out the facts, get an expert view on what all of this means, and answer some of those crucial questions that might be bothering you. Because let's face it, aviation is back, flying is back, and everyone needs to take flights. Now, here are some of the most common questions being asked when people see stories of this kind. Number 1, what happens if a pilot dies during a flight? Number 2, can the co-pilot fly and land the plane successfully and safely without the help of the main pilot? These are questions, even if you know the answers. These are questions people have. Number 3, are pilots extra burdened post-COVID? Have their schedules become even more stressful? Number 4, is more scrutiny required for pilot health and pilot schedules? Should they be given more rest and free time? Number 5, are airlines doing anything? Are they cognizant of this problem? Are they doing anything about pilot health? Now, let me share some more details with you about airline pilot stress factors. Remember, pilots are, it's a very glamorous profession. It looks very glamorous, but it is notoriously difficult and demanding. Let's just consider some of these facts. Number 1, very demanding workload, multiple flights, especially in the wake of the COVID pandemic. Pilots require high levels of alertness, sometimes across time zones if they're flying international. There's the burden of the safety of thousands of passengers across sectors that is constantly weighing on the minds of flying crew and pilots. Number 4, slow stress can build up and impact the health of pilots. It can give them cardiac problems, neurological problems, cognitive problems. There is this post-COVID pressure of added workload, which I'll come to in a minute, because I've been getting messages all of the last 1 hour from various pilots who know that I'm going to be doing this show, because we reached out to many of them, and they all have a fairly alarming story to tell. COVID aviation slump has added anxiety about job security, about whether their salaries are going to come on time. That has also added mental stress on pilots. Disrupted sleep cycles frequently impact cognitive functions. It can impact smoothness and accuracy of landings in certain extreme cases. Impairment of the ability to multitask. Your cognitive memory within the cockpit can be impaired as a result of lack of sleep and stress. So these are all very, very alarming sounding things, especially in the wake of a spate of pilot deaths that we're seeing. Poulomi Saha is with us. She covers civil aviation for us. She's been in touch with the airlines, the civil aviation regulator. Poulomi, it's always unfair to try and see if there is a pattern here, because each case is completely separate. In one of the cases we're talking about, the pilot died during a flight. He was a third crew member in the passenger cabin. The other pilot, the Indigo pilot, apparently died at the boarding gate before that flight. There are reports of the flight that happened from Miami to Chile where the pilot died, in fact, in the washroom while he was flying. It has basically called attention to the issue of pilot stress, which is certainly not something that can be ignored. What are you hearing about these cases, Poulomi?
Well, obviously, like you did point out, and that disclaimer needs to be clear, that there is no connection within these incidents. There is no pattern to be read into these incidents. But yes, the spotlight needs to be put on the issue of pilots, flying hours and whether they're getting enough rest. What about mental health and, are airlines providing for enough in order to, of course, create that awareness and, of course, for enough amount of counseling. Indian aviation, Shiv, as you mentioned, has been booming. Obviously, there is much more footfall, passenger traffic at our airports are now flying both domestically and internationally as well. And after after COVID, and when, of course, those restrictions were lifted and, aircraft took to the air again, there was what was called revenge flying. Everyone wanted to fly. Everyone wanted to get somewhere. So there's a lot of boom in the sector itself. But in the meantime, also, you've heard in the news how, there's been a lot of shake-up in the industry as well. SpiceJet has faced certain question marks that it is trying to answer. The DGCA put the scanner on SpiceJet, and as far as its operations were concerned, Go Air went bust. Akasa, of course, took off during this time. But there's a lot that's happening, and there's a lot of movement that's happening because pilots, of course, are very insecure about their jobs at this moment in terms of their salaries coming in on time as well. And these are some of the issues that they're dealing with. So the stress and anxiety levels are pretty high at this moment, and that spotlight that you've shown on that subject needs to be there.
Very, very true. Poulomi, thanks very much for getting us that update. It is something that cannot be left to chance. It needs urgent attention, and I will tell you why. Poulomi will update us more on this story going forward. Thanks for the moment, Poulomi.